Gideon was a farmer. He toiled under the hot sun, day in and day out, tending to his crops and livestock. His life was simple, yet filled with the satisfaction of hard work and the hope of a bountiful harvest. He lived in a time of fear. The air was thick with tension and the villagers were always on edge, constantly looking over their shoulders. The fear was palpable, a constant companion in their daily lives. A mean group of people, the Midianites, kept attacking Gideon's people. They were ruthless and relentless, descending upon the villages like a swarm of locusts, leaving destruction in their wake. They stole their food and made life hard. The villagers' hard-earned crops were taken away, leaving them with empty baskets and empty stomachs. Gideon was scared, and so were his neighbors. He felt small and weak. The weight of his fears bore down on him, making him feel insignificant and powerless against the might of the Midianites. He hid in a winepress, trying to protect his grain. The winepress, usually a place of joy and celebration, had become his refuge, a hiding spot from the ever-present threat of the raiders. He felt alone and afraid. The isolation was suffocating, and the fear gnawed at his spirit, making him question his own strength and resolve. He wondered, "What can I do?" The question echoed in his mind, a constant reminder of his perceived helplessness. He pondered his options, searching for a glimmer of hope in the darkness. The future looked dark and scary. The horizon was filled with uncertainty, and the villagers' faces reflected the dread of what was to come. Yet in the midst of this darkness, Gideon held on to a sliver of hope, believing that somehow things could change. Suddenly, an angel appeared. "Mighty hero," the angel said. Gideon was shocked. "Me, a hero?" he thought. Gideon felt anything but mighty. He was hiding, remember? "Go," the angel said, "and save your people from the Midianites." God believed in Gideon, even when Gideon didn't believe in himself. God saw a hero hiding inside a farmer. Gideon was still afraid. Despite the angel's assurance and the miraculous fire that consumed his offering, doubt lingered in his heart. He couldn't shake off the fear that he might not be the right person for the task ahead. He asked God for a sign. Gideon needed more than just words. He needed tangible proof that God was with him. So he turned to prayer, seeking divine confirmation. "Please make the ground wet with dew, but leave this fleece dry," he prayed, and God did it. The next morning the ground was soaked, but the fleece remained dry, just as Gideon had asked. The next night Gideon asked for another sign. His heart still wavered, and he needed further reassurance. Under the night sky he prayed once more. This time he asked for the fleece to be wet and the ground dry, and once again God answered his prayer. The fleece was drenched with dew, while the ground around it remained dry. Again, God did what Gideon asked. Gideon's heart was filled with relief and gratitude. He finally felt the assurance he needed to move forward. God was patient with Gideon's fear. He understood the weight of the task ahead and provided the signs Gideon needed to build his faith. He wanted Gideon to be sure. With newfound confidence, Gideon was ready to lead, knowing that God was truly with him every step of the way. Section 4. 300 warriors, one mighty God. Gideon gathered an army, but God said it was too big. Gideon, a humble man chosen by God, was tasked with leading the Israelites against the mighty Midianites. Initially, he amassed a large army, thinking numbers would ensure victory. But God had different plans. God told Gideon to send most of the soldiers home. He wanted to show that victory comes from faith and divine intervention, not sheer numbers. So Gideon, though puzzled, obeyed and dismissed many of his men. Gideon ended up with only 300 men. These were not just any men. They were chosen by God through a unique test at the water. They were vigilant, brave, and ready to follow Gideon into the unknown. That's smaller than a school. Imagine facing a vast enemy with just a handful of warriors. The odds seemed impossible, but with God, all things are possible. But God had a plan. He assured Gideon that with his guidance, the small army would triumph. It was a test of faith, courage and obedience. He told Gideon to have his men surround the Midianite camp at night. The strategy was unconventional, relying on surprise and psychological warfare rather than brute force. Each man carried a torch hidden inside a clay pot. This was to keep their presence hidden until the right moment. The element of surprise was crucial. At Gideon's signal, they broke the pots, letting the light shine, and blew their trumpets. The Midianites were terrified. The sudden burst of light and sound in the dead of night created chaos and confusion. They panicked and started fighting each other. In their confusion, the Midianites turned on one another, thinking they were under a massive attack. God helped Gideon's small army win a great victory. It was a triumph of faith and divine power, proving that with God, even the smallest force can achieve the greatest victory. Section 5. A legacy of courage. Gideon's story teaches us that God can do amazing things through ordinary people. Even when we feel afraid, God can give us courage. He sees the hero inside each of us. When we trust God, even when we are afraid, He can use us to do great things. So be strong and courageous. God is with you.